Hello and welcome to today's geometry lesson. You can see we're in chapter 9 covering lesson 7, and it's going to be talking about the law of sine and the law of cosine. Today we are just going to be talking about the law of sine, and we'll save the law of cosines for another day. All right, so let's take this triangle ABC, and notice the big triangle ABC is just any old general triangle. But if we look at just this triangle here, AC, and then the altitude drop down, this is a right triangle. So because of that, we can now set up the sine of A. So the sine of A is the side opposite, which is H, over the hypotenuse, B. Okay, and then now let's look at this other triangle over here, and this is also a right triangle. So we can set up the sine of B. And the sine of B is going to be the side opposite, H, over the hypotenuse, which is A. So if we take this, we can multiply both sides by A. So we have A times the sine of B is equal to H. And we can do the same thing on the other side, so we can multiply both sides by B. So B times the sine of A equals H. Well now, if H equals B sine of A, if H equals, and if H equals, then what we can say is B times the sine of A must be equal to A times the sine of B. All right, so now if I want to write this as a ratio instead, I can divide this side by B, and if I do that to one side, I have to do that to the other side. And if I wanted to divide this side by A, then I have to divide this side by A. So I did the same things to both sides. These B's are going to cancel out. These A's are going to cancel out. And what we are left with is the sine of A over the side opposite, little a, sine of A over the side opposite, little a, is equal to the sine of B over little b. The sine of B over the side opposite. Okay, and notice in this triangle ABC, that triangle is not a right triangle. So we started off only using the ratio of sine because we had right triangles, but now we end up with this ratio of the sine of A over little a is equal to sine of B over little b. And that's what all the rest of this is. So that we end up with the sine of A over A is the sine of B over little b. And that original triangle that I started with, A, B, C, is not a right triangle. So we can use the law of sines for any triangle. It does not have to be just a right triangle. That's the law of sines. If you were just using the sine of an angle, now, and we're just using this ratio and we're going to do opposite over hypotenuse, this needs to be a right triangle. But the law of sines is the sine of A over little a and the sine of B over little b, and it actually also includes the sine of C over little c. So you can put any two together to make a proportion to go ahead and solve. All right, so like we said, the law of sine works for any triangle. And so we have the ratio sine of A over little a, sine of B over little b, and sine of C. And now when you're setting up a proportion, no, you're only going to take the sine of A over little a is the sine of B over little b. Or you can set up the sine of A over little a is equal to the sine of C over little c. And the third case would be the sine of b over little b is equal to the sine of c over little c. All right, and of course you could set them up completely the opposite way and just have all the lengths on top and then the signs on the bottom. But most people do it where you have the sine of a on top and then the length of a side, little a, on the bottom. All right, let's try a few examples here. All right, so we want to find NP. What is NP? So I can set up the sine of 88 over the side opposite, which is going to be NP. And that is going to equal to the sine of 39 over 22. Okay, we only have one missing part here, that's NP. So we're going to solve this by cross multiplying. So I'm going to take 22 times the sine of 88, and then that equals the sine of 39 times NP. And what are we going to do? We're going to divide by the sine of 39. Divide by the sine of 39. Now, most people just go right from the setup, so they have this set up. Okay, I need to see that. That's a point. You must set it up. And then you cross multiply the two you know, and the one this one right here is the odd man out. Then that's what's going to go on the bottom. So I'm going to grab my calculator right now, and I am going to put into my calculator 22 sine of 88, and I just have a tendency to like to get my answer, and then so I hit enter, and then I hit divide by sine of 39. And I am getting this, if we're going to round to the nearest tenth, I am getting NP to be equal to 34.9. So rounding to the 10th. All right, I just did it twice on my calculator. Oops, I guess that doesn't round to 0.9 because it's 0.958. So this 9 either stays a 9 or goes up, and because that's a 5, that's going to make that go up. So this is actually going to round to 35.0. So I'm getting 35.0. All right, let's give another one a try here. All right, so what do we have here? Looks like we have the sine of 50 and the side opposite, so the sine of 50, and we're going to look at that side opposite is going to be 7.6, and that's going to equal the sine of x, because that's what we don't know, the sine of x over 4.3. All right, so we're going to have to cross multiply here. So we're going to take 4.3 times the sine of 50. Okay, and then you always divide by the one you don't know. So we're going to divide by 7.6. All right, so in my calculator, I'm now taking 4.3 times the sine of 50. I got a decimal, 3.29399. Now I'm going to divide by 7.6. And again, I have a decimal in here. So I have 0.4334 equals the sine of x. Now remember, whenever you are looking for an angle measure, which we are in this case, we need to do the inverse sign. So right now I have this whole big decimal in my calculator. So I'm going to hit second sign because I want inverse sign. And then I want my calculator to copy this. So I'm going to hit second sign. Now what's in my calculator says sine to the -1, and I have parentheses. So I need to get a decimal in here. So this decimal that I want, I already have in my calculator. So I'm going to hit second answer and then hit enter, and it'll do my math for me. And then I end up getting, for the measure of angle X, if they're going to ask us to round it to the 10th, I have 25.684. So this 6 is going to actually go up. So it's going to be 25.7 degrees. And then if they ask us to round to the nearest whole degree, then we would say 26 degrees. So just make sure you're reading your directions. Sometimes they want 10th, and sometimes they want the rounded to the nearest whole number. All right, so second answer, that answer ANS is right above the negative sign. So when you have the negative sign on your calculator, there's an ANS on top of it. And so that's what I hit to get that decimal in there. I hit second and then that negative sign that has the answer, and it just kind of pops that decimal in there. It remembers it for you, and then you just hit enter and get your final answer. All right, those are the two kinds of problems that we're solving for today. We're either looking for an angle measure like this one we just did, or this one before it when we're looking for the length of a side. All right, good luck on your homework and the law of sines.